Coming up next, Sitting at 30 takes you downtown for the weekly luncheon meeting of the City Club of Portland. Live weekly coverage of City Club is produced through the facilities of Portland Cable Access. Now we join the City Club for this week's program.
Good afternoon. I'm Paddy Tillett, President-elect of the City Club of Portland. A symbiotic relationship can exist between sustainability and capitalism in American business, and does exist at Portland's Norm Thompson, Inc. Today, John Emrick, Chief Executive Officer for Norm Thompson, and his sustainability manager, who's known as the sustainability guy, Derek Smith, who's also a director of the New Oregon Business Association, will tell us how it all works. But before we proceed to the program, we'll hear a presentation of our Business and Technology Issues Committee. It's an informational report on sustainability efforts in Portland. The committee's worked on this report for the past 2 years, and committee member Tom LaBerge will present a brief overview of the report. Tom?
Thank you. I'm Tom LaBerge, and one of the co-chairs for the Business and Technology Committee. And Sue Thomas, my other co-chair, was supposed to be doing this today, but she had to go out of town on business, so I'm afraid you have to deal with me instead of her. We're here to announce our new informational report, as Patty said, Building a Sustainable Future for Portland. And there's some on the tables, I think, or there was on mine, and there's some on the way out if you'd like to pick one up. They're in a draft. It should be out in its final form very soon. And in undertaking the report took the committee 2 years of rather intense effort. I joined the committee a little bit late into this, and it was quite an effort. In researching this, the committee interviewed representatives from businesses, government, and community organizations. They did an extensive survey of a number of sustainability organizations and businesses in the Portland region, and they reviewed all the sustainability literature. And so in looking at this, we found that sustainability was a rather complex issue. And of course, if you read the report, then it'll all be made simple. So this is the shameless plug. But in the big picture, sustainability is sort of a focus on the quality of life. It ensures that we meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs and improve their quality of life. And in doing this, sustainability focuses on the 3 E's: the environment, the economy, and equity. The report shows how businesses, communities, governments, and individuals are connecting their daily activities to this broader image of sustainability. And as I said, it's an informational report. It's a primer on sustainability and the sustainability activities mostly here in the Portland area. It gives the histories, the players, the drivers, and how this could affect you or how you could get involved, you as an individual, in your business, in your community organizations. It also summarizes some of the local observations on where we might go from here on sustainability. So, if you don't mind, what I'd like to do is introduce a number of the members of the committee to you. And if I could ask them to stand up, this is their chance after 2 years of meeting sometimes weekly to get a little recognition and also to show their support for sustainability. And you might save your loud and uproarious applause until I get everybody standing so that we can get through this very quickly. Jennifer Allen, saw Jennifer walking around. There she is. Victor Allen, Scott Defloff, he was in here somewhere. Tim Dittmer, Holly Dragu, Ron Innes, Ron's there. Catherine Giacchino, Darcy Hitchcock, Kurt Kraus, Tim Kringen is the final editor on this and did a heroic deed here, pulling it all together. Clem Laufenberg, going to be up here asking, I think, the first question. Blake Rohrbacher, Don Smith, Nancy Stuber, Glenn Thomas, and then Sue Thomas, who couldn't make it today. The committee would also like to thank Paul Listner and the rest of the City Club staff for all the things that they've done to help us, as well as the Research Board and the Board of Governors for their quick response and nice questions and guidance. We might have a round of applause for... Now, just one more thing. Today's presentation is the first of 4 business and sustainability talks. The next 3 will be breakfasts, and they're starting in January. And you might look in the City Club bulletin for announcements about this. Thank you very much. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Well, because this is an information report, it makes no recommendations and therefore requires no vote. You can find copies of the report, as Tom said, on the way out, and also on the City Club website, which, as you all by now will know, is www.pdxcityclub.org. Thank you very much to Tom and the committee for that report. I like to think I know something about sustainability myself, and I have to say, having read it, I learned a great deal more. It's really first-class stuff. On Friday, November the 24th, there'll be no program. We hope you'll be enjoying your Thanksgiving holiday. On Friday, December the 1st, Rabbi and author Michael Lerner returns to the City Club podium to discuss the thesis of his latest book, Spirit Matters, and that'll be here at the MAC. City Club lost another of its long-time loyal members this week with the passing of Elo Bonihadi. Elo was most active in the club in the 70s when she served on several research reports, chaired the City Club Foundation Board, and served as club treasurer on the Board of Governors. She was an active civic participant who gave back to her community in many ways throughout her life. She'll be sorely missed by all of us who knew her, and our thoughts are very much with her family and friends. I'd like you to notice that the bulletin has recently included an additional member pledge card for this year's annual fund. I'd welcome members and non-members for that matter to please join us in supporting the important work of this club. To date, we've raised $66,000 towards our $90,000 goal. So we're well on the way, but we do need some more help. If you haven't already done so, please make your contribution, and you could hand a check to a member of staff on the way out today. Our member host today, as you heard, is Clem Laufenberg, who is a member of the Business and Technology Issue Committee, and he will ask the first question of our speakers. Following Clem's question, we'll open the program to questions from the City Club members in the audience. Please line up behind the microphone, and you know what dreadful things happen if your question goes on for more than 30 seconds or turns into a diatribe. Broadcast of the City Club program this quarter is made possible in part by corporate underwriting from the following: Pacific Care, Pope & Talbot Incorporated, Zimmer-Gunsel-Fraska Partnership. We're very grateful for their support. Since the natural step was formally introduced into Oregon 3.5 years ago, I've seen both John and Jane Emrick in action, demonstrating the benefits to business, community, and individuals of practicing sustainability and really understanding what that blanket term means. Their company, Norm Thompson Inc., has set a splendid example of what can be achieved. Chief Joseph's attributed with that aphorism about being trustees of the environment for our children's children, and if his ghost is lurking about, I'm sure he'd be very pleased to see what John Emrick has been up to. John.
I hope he's not watching. First of all, I have to apologize today for those that know me and they wonder why I'm in a tie. I'm not going to see my banker today. I'm at the City Club. And also a negative plug for Norm Thompson is that we don't sell ties anymore. So I had to go to Nordstrom's to buy one. And I got outstanding service. And Derek doesn't wear one either. So we're both kind of looking at each other like this is going to be an interesting day. The first thing I'd like to say is the report that was done, and I think Ron Ennis, I think you asked that I attend one of the early meetings just to give some thoughts, and I knew so little back then. And I know a little bit more now, but it seems like I made a lot of progress, but it's still a long path. But when I read the report about a week ago, I was absolutely thrilled at what went into the report. We're often reading reports like this, and you read it and say, that's great, but it isn't that great. It isn't going to help me. I can't give it to a friend and let them read it and see if they can understand. And I realize this report is absolutely outstanding. It's something that I can give out many times to people when they ask basic questions about what can we do in our community, what's happening in our community. So I applaud all of you that worked on it. I think it's just wonderful. And you've done a lot of work that maybe I don't have to do now. I can just take it from you and put my name on it. What I'd like to do today is just give you a brief overview of what's going to happen so that you're wondering, is John going to stand here the whole time and talk? And what's he going to talk about? I thought what I'd do is give you an overview now, and I'll spend a little bit of time just talking about the company itself and how we started and how Jane and myself got involved in this whole effort. And then as we progress forward, there's a transition that takes place that's pretty significant. And that transition is the person that represents that is sitting over here, the fellow with the tie. They're all got ties on today, Derek. And he's going to talk about what's happened since the early stages. And then it's going to come back to me, and I'm going to try to bring it back into a bigger picture, kind of get a bit away from Norm Thompson and more talking in terms of this whole effort as it relates to the city and the state. And for some of you that know, I'm going to go real fast on this because I'm trying not to give a commercial plug, but somebody says some people don't know who Norm Thompson is or what the company is, and a lot of people know of us as that little store in Northwest Portland on 18th and Thurman, and it's still there, and there's one at the airport, and there are a few other outlet stores in Oregon, but primarily we're a catalog company, and we've been in business. We're now in our 51st year. I'm in my 35th year. It's hard to believe that, too. We have roughly 500 employees, and probably today we have maybe 12 to 1,500 working because we're a very seasonal business, and then we go back to around 5 to 550. We're doing just a little under 200 million in sales, which for me is always a mind-boggling thought because we were doing $500,000 when I started. But we're primarily in the catalog business, selling to a national market through 3 different titles: Norm Thompson, Solutions, and Early Winners. I normally don't give that plug here because we don't have stores for Solutions and Early Winners, and I know it can frustrate some people, so I probably should not have said what I just said, but it's over. The personal story. Jane, who is not here today, and for those that know, if it wasn't for Jane, I don't think we'd be anywhere near where we are today. It would not have happened by myself alone, and not that I didn't have an interest, but I have a sidekick that just doesn't give up. And 30 years ago, when the first Earth Day, and Rachel Carson had written her book, Silent Spring, we gave them as Christmas presents to all of our friends and family, and they thought, oh, the Emricks have gone off the deep end. What's this all about? And we kind of got quiet after that and said, let's don't preach, let's just practice, and let's do what we can as citizens, which is not, at the time was not a whole lot. Recycling, thanks to Tom McCall and some things that happened earlier, we were making some moves forward, but we weren't making a difference other than educating ourselves. And this went on for some time, and finally in 1994, the management of the company asked if I would be willing to spearhead building a new corporate headquarters. And I think it was a good move on their part. They were just saying, if we can keep John out of the day-to-day business, the company will do just fine. And if he can focus on that, he'll get the building built, and then we'll go on and continue to do business. And I said I would do it only if my wife was my partner. And neither one of us ever built anything, so it was kind of an intimidating thought when I said that. But it became quite instructive. The architect had already been picked, and we were starting to go down a path of building a 54,000 square foot building. And Jane said, okay, if we're going to build a building, this is our chance. Let's build it green. And when she used the word green, a lot of people thought about landscaping, not in terms of what green really means when you think of environmental. But she came up with a simple thought that was asked over and over and over. And it's a question that's being asked even today. The building's built and we're moving on, but the same question is asked. And when we make a decision, every decision that we made on that building, whether it was materials or systems or site, location, we would ask what would have the least impact on the environment. There are options when you ask that question. There aren't options if you don't ask it. And it was amazing when we started out, there were simple things that were thought about, and a lot of the people were not all that excited. She would go to almost every weekly meeting, even though she wouldn't be the hard hat type or the person that would be driving it, but she was always there asking that question. And after about a month or two, the question was asked without her asking it. And all of a sudden, the building was built, and we were fortunate that we built a building on time, on budget, which was a big issue within our company, that we weren't going to spend a lot of money, and that any green item that cost more had to have a payback of 8 years. And if it didn't, then we couldn't do it. So she got smart and bundled them, and to say, well, if we bundle the items, if overall we can get it within 8 years, how about that? The management agreed. I hadn't thought of that. It was a great move because it turned out that we could bring some things in that might take 15 years payback. But overall, the payback is over with now. We've actually paid it back in 4 years. And it didn't happen because of things that we did. There were a lot of partners that helped us through this process. So I was feeling pretty good, going into the office and seeing we got this great new office and people like to be here. And I got home and Jane said, well, what are we going to do tomorrow? What about all the employees that walk into the business every day? You know, the life isn't over. This is just the beginning. And all of a sudden I had that feeling that she came home and said, guess what, I'm pregnant. And if she's pregnant, I'm pregnant. And the company's pregnant. And that was good news because we realized we can't stop. You can't start something and then just say, well, we've done our thing and move on. That's not enough. So we figured we had to try to figure out how to educate our employees. What could we do? And I was stumbling trying to figure out how to make this work. And the natural step, which has been referred to before, and some of you may know about it, and I think there'll be probably more discussion about it later, which is a Swedish model. Excuse me, not a Swedish model, not as in a female, as in a planet. Here we go. A plan towards sustainability. We took it, we looked at it, and we said, this is great. We can actually take this, we can modify it or embellish it, not modify it, but embellish it to suit our employees' needs, so it's relevant to our company. And Jane got involved in that, and she developed, with the help of the Natural Step people, and then we customized a program that was a 4-hour training, and it was customized for Norm Thompson, so the employees could say, this makes sense for us. And then the goal was to train every single employee in the company, and we did it in teams of about 15 people per meeting. So it took a long time. It took over a year to do it. So now they're all charged up, ready to go, and I said, now what? Now what do we do next? And we started saying, I don't know what we do next, because we know that we want to work down this path of sustainability, but how do we actually make it happen? And John and Jane, you've got a great vision, and everybody's excited, but what do we actually physically do to manage this process? And we realized that I couldn't do it. My job is really more of staying as a visionary, or basically staying out of the operating head, the hair for the operating heads. But the vision was great, but the execution was another story. And I believe that we had to go outside. We had to create a new position, which is the manager of sustainability, and we had to have that person report directly to me. So I have the president reports to me, and now the sustainability manager reports to me. And I think the message was quite clear to people that this is very important to us, and that we were going to follow through on this. So we started looking and saying, how do you find a sustainability manager? And we said we need somebody that the business people will value, will listen to, and that person will listen to the business people. Otherwise, we're not going to get very far. And we found a person who had just graduated. This is going to be it's not a plug for the University of Oregon, but I will bring it up, because this weekend I think we probably have 50-50 in this audience. I don't know. But Derek received his master's in business at the University of Oregon just about 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago. Had a good business background, and we decided that's it. He has a business background, but his passion is a concern for the environment. So this was a perfect match for him, and it's turning out to be a perfect match for us. And what I'm going to do now is turn this over to Derek so he can talk a little bit about what's happened after this great idea.
Well, thank you. I too would like to applaud the City Club on its very comprehensive report, and it's very, very great work, and I think it is something we can just hand off and say, here it is. Here's all the information we need to move forward. So I'm going to kind of play the straight man to the funny guy, which you can see is a pretty easy thing to do with John around. I got a few laughs, but anyway, so what I'd like to do is kind of build on what John just talked about and talk about the execution, talk about what we actually are doing in the company. And and that's my job. So just, I mean, John said the execution is really important, and of course it is, but I do want to stress that I couldn't be successful in my job without the vision and the support from the top. And I think that's what's unique about our situation at Norm Thompson is that we, as we move down this path toward corporate sustainability, and we really are just beginning, you know, we have both of these pieces put together. We have the vision and the support from the top, which you need the top down, the clear articulation. But we also have somebody who's accountable for moving this thing forward. And now everybody really inside the company is accountable for it. So that's what I'm going to talk about, is how we are trying to, within this company, move to not only improve our environmental performance, but also make sure that we're also improving our economic performance as we go forward. And that, again, is another key duality that needs to occur. Having said that, we still face a lot of challenges, and we're very far from where we want to be as a company. And frankly, it will take quite some time for us to get there. But the point is we are on the path. And so I'll kind of tell you now about how we've put together the pieces of the plan that sprouted from John and Jane's vision and that really guides us into what we do. Now, I realized when I got to Norm Thompson that, okay, so here's a company that's been around for 50 years, that it knows how to succeed and be a profitable company. So I can't just walk in there and lay down some revolutionary mandates about, you know, that might threaten that success so far. So my role really is, I don't see myself as an environmental traffic cop, which is sometimes an environmental manager might be considered that. I think sustainability is a little different, and so I see myself as a partner within the company to work with the merchandising folks. They decide what type of merchandising is going to sell well, which of course we need stuff that's going to sell well to remain healthy as a company. So if we choose that, what do we do given that fact to move us toward the path on sustainability? So as a result, we're taking very measured but significant steps, and we're doing our best to employ more of a holistic strategy as opposed to just doing a few things here and there. And that's kind of what I want to lay out for you. So I'm gonna lay out that strategy, and I don't do this as a commercial for the company, but really I do this as kind of a hope that this could be used as a model for other companies. So one of the first things we did when I got to the company is we had a very honest assessment of who we are as a company and where are our impacts. What do we do to the environment? And I think that this self-analysis, this transparency notion, and really being open with not only yourself but also your stakeholders, and that's why we're here today to talk about this. We have a lot of things to work on as a company, and you really need to look inside to really move forward, I think. So we defined our 5 areas of impact as follows. The first is product, packaging, printing, transportation, and influence. And I'm just going to step through those really quickly. So in terms of product, we're asking now, how and where was this product made? Does it have recycled content? Are there toxic impacts, and not only in the production of the product, but also in the use, in the disposal? Are we ensuring human rights in the factories? What about the labor conditions? In packaging, we're asking, can we minimize packaging? Can we make sure that packaging is biodegradable, compostable, recyclable? Does it have recycled content? In printing, what we're talking about is not only the printing process, which has some toxic considerations, but also the paper making process, which has some things that we need to take care of, and also forestry. Obviously, we're a catalog company. We have a significant forestry impact, which can mean a very positive forestry impact. In transportation, what I'm beginning to talk about now is the more indirect parts of what our impacts are. We don't own the distribution infrastructure that takes the products from our warehouse to our customers, but we are a pretty big customer to our carriers, so we can have influence over the greening of those operations. So that really brings me to the last area of impact, which is influence. Well, the way that we think about this is that even if we were successful, if we were sustainable as a relatively small company, the net benefit to the world would be much smaller than if we could just change our industry maybe 1 or 2 points. Or we could move the business world just a little bit because we were a practical model that this thing doesn't hurt economically. So that's what we really are out to do. We put a lot of emphasis on the influence part. So after we assessed our impacts, we set goals to mitigate these impacts and to point us in the direction that we want to head. So I'm just going to list a few things that we're working on. In merchandising, we're working on organic cotton. So that in 5 years, all of the cotton that we sell will be organic. Cotton is, as you may not know, is potentially the most damaging crop that exists in the world today. It uses 25% of the world's herbicides and 12 to 15% of the world's pesticides. So the growing and harvesting of cotton is incredibly toxic, but it doesn't need to be that way. This is a challenging goal because there's not much capacity out there. There's not much organic cotton in production. So what we need to do and what we are doing is partnering with other companies like Patagonia and Nike to prove demand for the farmers so that capacity can be increased and then prices will go down over time. And that's why we have a 5-year goal, so that we can be very measured about this. And another thing we're doing in merchandising is we're phasing out PVC, which is polyvinyl chloride, which is a particularly toxic type of plastic, and it surrounds our world. Anything that says vinyl is PVC, and it's in all kinds of consumer products and packaging. We're also beginning to work with our suppliers on a variety of issues, not just these two, but also just a couple weeks ago, I got back from China, and the president of our company also went, and we are beginning to work with our vendors to ensure human rights in the factories. In paper and forestry, this is one of the biggest areas, obviously a big impact of ours, and we're very excited. We have a partnership with a group called the Alliance for Environmental Innovation, which some of you may know is a project of environmental defense and the Pew Charitable Trusts. And the Alliance have been just phenomenal to work with. This is an organization that shares our vision. They want to prove that environmental gains can also have financial gains. The economy and the environment are not at odds. And so they also believe, as we do, that the collaboration between for-profits and non-profits is a key driver of change. They've worked with UPS, Time, McDonald's, Starbucks, and others. So they've got a history of doing a good job with other companies. So our main goal in partnering with the Alliance is to prove the case for recycled content in the catalog industry. Right now, most of the major players in the catalog industry use no recycled content. But we're also looking at source reduction. So for example, can we cut the size of our order forms? Can we eliminate envelopes where they're not necessary? We're also examining creative ways to target our mailing lists even more, which maybe some of you would appreciate during this Christmas season. You probably have a few when you get home. And finally, we're exploring the potential of sending customers postcards or maybe smaller catalogs and directing them to our website instead of sending them the traditional bigger catalogs. Also, we want to begin offering customers choices around how often they want to receive catalogs. So we've learned a lot so far. We've been working with them for 7 months, but we have a few more months left, and we're going to publish a report that we'll issue then to the industry and pretty much the business world. And hopefully we will have an impact and really prove that we can do this. So in terms of packaging, we're really just getting started. We just had a meeting today with a vendor who's selling some biodegradable, 100% post-consumer recycled materials that hopefully we can use in our packaging. So we're really just kind of researching what the alternatives are out there, and then we'll be testing those alternatives. And hopefully, if we come to you in a year or so, we could show you that our packaging is looking much better. In operations, we're doing several things. We're attempting to cut our solid waste in half in our facilities this fiscal year. So our dumpsters will be hauled 50% less. And as we look to expand as a company and renovate our retail stores or build a new distribution center or a call center or expand those, we will do those with green building principles. We know that that can work now. So these are just a few examples, and this year we hope to do all of this. We hope to accomplish all this with a net financial gain of $500,000. So that means that includes investments. And we hope to really use this financial piece to solidify our position as the leader in our industry on environmental issues. Over the course of the next 5 years, our environmental goals are outlined as follows. The 4 issues I'm going to talk about are global warming, toxics, habitat destruction, and waste. And these are what we consider our top environmental issues as a company. And so we're dedicating our resources to those. In global warming, we're striving to have a 0 net carbon impact in 5 years. That's a very difficult goal. And again, when we don't own the infrastructure, it can be very difficult. So we realize that we may have to do some offsets to achieve this target. For toxics, we're working to develop a list of chemicals that we won't allow in our products. And a lot of companies, we're partnering with them on that as well. As a catalog company, our habitat destruction mitigation goals relate mostly to forestry. So we're hoping to have 0 negative forestry impact in 5 years. The way we'll do that is we'll increase the recycled content as high as it can go, and then the virgin content that's required, and there probably always will be virgin content that's required, we will ensure that that comes from Forest Stewardship Council certified lands. So these are lands that are certified sustainably harvested. And finally, we hope that in 5 years our buildings will have 0 waste. We will literally not have dumpsters in our buildings in 5 years. And we'll do all this. Our financial goal for the next 5 years related to sustainability is $5 million net. Our president, I don't know if John's as conservative about, or liberal, I suppose, about these numbers as our president is, but she thinks this is conservative number. So I've got my work cut out for me. So anyway, those are some things that we're working on, and I hope it's useful to you. I just want to close my part by offering a couple thoughts with you, kind of some things that we've learned along the way so far. And the first is that businesses need to begin recognizing themselves as part of a system. They are part of the natural world in every way imaginable. They get the materials from the planet to make the products, and those products have effects on the planet and its people. And also in terms of a financial system, we've got to stop worrying about that doing the right thing may cost us money. We don't have a choice. We can figure this out, and we have proved it with our building, and so we're going to move forward throughout the company on that. There are plenty of savings in reducing reliance on natural resources, and that's not to say, as I've already said, that investments won't be necessary, because they will. But we can figure out a way to have the savings from one department pay for the investments that are required in another department. And the current silo-oriented finance that some companies employ just simply does not make sense. It sounds like a kind of a simple methodology that if you can save more than you can spend, why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't any CFO do that? But I think that this is really fundamental. It's a very fundamental thing that companies need to begin addressing. Financing of sustainability needs to be done this way. Second, we will, as a people, get to sustainability by working together. Norm Thompson is very lucky to have had tremendous partners so far in this effort. In developing our sustainable salmon policy, we benefited from the help of EcoTrust, which is a phenomenal nonprofit group based right here in Portland. With PVC, we've gotten significant help from the EPA. On forestry issues, the Natural Resources Defense Council gave us a briefing on forestry policy. And we're also working with the Certified Forest Products Council, which happens also to be located here in the Portland area. University of Portland has helped us understand our packaging impacts. And on global warming, we're working with the Climate Neutral Network, another Portland-based organization. I've already mentioned the partnerships with Nike and Patagonia and other companies on organic cotton. Now, I could go on and on and on. Probably rather I not. But my point is this, that we really are at a unique period when the value of collaboration among for-profits, nonprofits, academic and government communities is highly regarded. And I think that this is a very big sign of hope. Thank you.
That's the guy who gets it done, and I love it. I want to talk a little bit about the bigger picture, but I kind of segue from what Derek just said. A surprise to us in this last 2 years as we've been moving down this path towards sustainability was that we were not doing it by ourselves. We had no idea the partners that were available to us. And not only partners you could call up and say, for a fee, would you come and talk to us and tell us what to do? You call them up and they're on your doorstep. They don't charge you. I got to be careful that they're not hearing right now. But basically they're saying, you're trying to advance our thought. And we need you. We need you out there to do that. So we're going to support you any way we possibly can. That includes the city of Portland, Metro, the governor's office on his efforts. They've been helping us. We've been trying to help them. And we all of a sudden realized we're not in this by ourselves. And if we were, it would just be a nice thought that a couple people had, and we went off and did our thing and it was over. And we're realizing now that if we can continue to prove our model, that's going to make a difference to influence business. But if we don't prove our model and don't influence business, then that doesn't move, from our standpoint, that we don't move forward very far. But business isn't going to move forward if it isn't taking the approach that Derek just said, that we're part of a bigger system. There's citizens, there's our government, there's a word we tend to use, either nonprofit or NGOs. I'm going to give a little plug now. It's not my idea, but I think we got to change the word nonprofit to social profit. When you say nonprofit, you tend to think in terms of, well, we're not this, well, we don't make money, we apologize and kind of have hat in hand, and you're asking for help. Or we're not a government agency. We're just, that's they define themselves. I say they because I've been involved in a lot, I should say. I mean, we try to define ourselves by what we're not. But a nonprofit is a social profit organization, absolutely critical to making this whole thing work. And they are a critical part of this package. But if we are not working, if all of us are not working together, then we're not going to get very far. I try to do this quickly now. How's our time?
You're doing just fine.
I mean, if I stop now, we're just fine.
No.
Okay. What I didn't tell you that after we were introduced to the natural step, they had their national convention in Chicago the following year, which was, I think, 1990. Help somebody out here went with me, 98. 1998, it was a 5-day, non-stop, tiring. And I decided I was going to go. I had to get this deeper into me to understand what it was about. So I went back for the 5-day, and it's a big commitment of time and money. And there were roughly 250 people for the 5 days, and roughly 25. I think it was 25 of 250, or it was 22 of 225, were from Portland or from Oregon. And Paul Hawken, who a lot of you may have heard of, was there and presenting. And Paul said, did anybody notice, he was giving some stats out and said that, isn't it amazing that Oregon has 10%, they're 1% of the population, and they're 10% of the representation. There's something going on there, there's something special. And we felt pretty proud about that, but we also felt that we had a responsibility, that if there's critical mass here, if there's movement, then that it's incumbent on us to keep moving forward on this and proving a regional model. And I'm going to veer from my notes a little bit now because I just realized that I'll go this way rather than give you this piece that was going to give you. Jane and I took a year sabbatical in 1992, 93, and we spent the whole time outside the country, and we were becoming very discouraged about what was happening to our planet, both environmentally and socially, and just very discouraged, and came back to Portland, like, what are we going to do next? And you're trying to figure out how to pick your chin up and say, we've got to do something. And this whole idea of think globally and act locally was a theme that was kind of a hollow thought. Until I met somebody from Seattle, Alan Durning, who's with the Northwest Earth Watch. And he has a theory that we have to look at the bioregion, and we take it from southern Alaska all the way down to northern California, and from the coast all the way to the Rockies, and ignore state boundaries and federal country boundaries, because the natural system doesn't pay any attention to that. And it's kind of an arrogant thought that we can just superimpose over the natural system our view of how things should be controlled. So he basically takes that all away and says, let's just look at the ecosystem and let's look what's going on with it, and but from a social standpoint as well as environmental. And we have an intact ecosystem. We probably anywhere in the world we could say we have a thriving economy, but we also have an opportunity to protect what we have. And we can do it here, and we could prove a model, a Northwest model that could become a national model or a world model. Well, then I got pretty pumped up and said, okay, well then what can we do? Well, we can start with Norm Thompson. We can start from the business sector and see if we can make a difference, and then watch other people come along that are coming along. So anyway, I had this dream, and Martin Goebel, it was really Martin Goebel from Sustainable Northwest. It's his dream, but I decided that it was my dream. At least I'm giving credit to him. And the dream was that we came together in a great big circle, and we had government agencies, farmers, political organizations, profit-seeking organizations or social profit organizations, timber companies, manufacturers, citizens. We all got together in a big circle, and we came with the intent of saying, this is what we do. Now, when we started, we didn't, and here's the impact that we're having on the environment. None of us chose to do that. None of us got into business or into different institutions to see if we could degrade the environment. We started our organizations because it was job, it was opportunity, whatever it was. But now we're here and we're doing some things that aren't good. And if we could come together and share that and say, this is what I do, you know, how many trees do we use to print catalogs? That's the worst thing we could do. We could sit there and say, let's try to prove why a brick and mortar retailer is worse than a catalog company. I mean, try to make that point, then we can feel good and say, well, now we're okay because those guys pollute more than we do or destroy the environment. But that's not the point. We all do something to different degrees, and if we don't come together and say all of us are in this together, all of us have to come forward and basically admit what we do and recognize that we're not choosing to do something that's bad, and we come together and we try to solve it together. And I tend to be a bit of a dreamer, but as I think about this, there are an awful lot of people in Oregon that are feeling the same way. We have an awful lot of dreamers in Oregon that I think are trying to make things happen and make a dream a reality. And I really believe it's possible. And we're excited to be here today. I'm just excited that the City Club has done this paper because it's giving us ammunition and it's giving others ammunition. And we believe that we're going down a path that's going to make a difference, and we're not going to go alone. And then hopefully we can prove a Northwest model that becomes a national and world model. Thank you.
Well, thank you, John and Derek, for your presentation and your candid remarks. I really appreciate your personal remarks, John. My question deals with, or concerns the reluctance on the part of other CEOs to embrace sustainability. And John, I was wondering if you could speak to that initial reluctance that you noticed when you first mentioned sustainability to some of your CEO friends and maybe even some of your managers in your company. And what I'm really wondering is what's underneath that reluctance? How do you understand it, and what can we do about it?
I had known Clem for a long time, and I had no idea he was going to be here. And he didn't even tell me the question he was going to ask, so I'm not prepared other than at this moment. But I've been asked that question many times, and I think that the reluctance for most CEOs is that we need to survive. We can't be sustainable if we can't economically be sustainable. So the first thing we have to concern about is not making a lot of profit, but is to survive, is to make a profit so we can be in business. And I'm working hard, you know, this is the quote, I'm working as hard as I can to keep my company in a very competitive world alive. And then you come in with this idea, and there's a lot of fear there. I've got to focus on keeping the business financially healthy. So it's pretty hard. It's like you're out there talking to somebody who's just working their tail off, or they're chopping wood, and you're saying there's a better way to do it, and you're talking to them right while they're chopping. You know, and the axe may come our direction if we're not careful. But I think a lot of times, though, that that is not their focus. Often that question hasn't been asked, and until it's asked, then then the answers aren't important. I love it when a CEO, and a number have called me and asked me, John, really does it work? Is this greenwashing? Is this a marketing ploy, or what is it? And the advantage for some years now, I've been able to explain what happened with our building. And when we start talking about the economic gains, it gets their attention. It really does. But then the next thing is, yeah, but what can I do in my business? And it's a big challenge. And that's one of the reasons that I've been willing to talk, and I've talked to many organizations trying to help them by saying, I'll give you everything we know. The thing that's interesting about this whole movement, it's not, we don't view it as it's a trade secret. We've come up with a way to try to help make the environment better, but we're not going to tell anybody else. I mean, that's a pretty silly thought. I mean, obviously you want everybody to understand it. So we're finding ourselves really willing to talk to CEOs and to people within companies to try to help them out. But I think for the most part, it's a foreign thought. It's not something they've done all their life. It's something we haven't done all our lives. And it can be viewed as just an extra thing to do, and it might be competing with myself or my company trying to stay in business.
Walt Roberts, a City Club member. And so, John, you and I were in Chicago at the same time, went through that 5-day together, and it was my first opportunity to really get immersed as well, so I shared that with you. My question is really about sort of the human spirit dimension of this. And Derek, you and I were in New York last week, and your president of Norm Thompson gave a great presentation, and I asked her this question as well. So there's the vision part, there's the management part of a sustainability effort, and then there's the whole, what does everybody bring in terms of their spirit, their inspiration, their wanting to make a difference, their wanting to contribute. And so the question is what are your observations about people within your own company? What have you been inspired by, perhaps last week or recently? But my question is generally about the human spirit and wanting to make a difference part that seems to get unleashed and or sometimes crushed by a management system, or not owned, not sharing that vision that you may have, but enough.
Thank you. Well, I want to make a comment I've made a number of times before, that what's sort of been driving myself and driving my wife Jane is that this basic thought that we don't own the land. We do not own the land, and we don't own what's on the land, and that we're stewards of the land. So if you start with that thought, and it's a fact, then if you work from there, it's a lot easier to deal with a lot of this. But as far as inspiration, my inspiration has come from a lot from my wife, books that I've read, people like Paul Hawken, people that are out there really trying to make a difference. And I find myself being willing to listen and not get defensive. Tell me all that we're doing wrong, and then try to work from there as opposed to try to deflect things. But I find that there are more and more people out there today that are feeling this. It's a pretty fundamental feeling that we're the species that are either going to continue to make a big mess of the world, or we're going to make it better. And there are a lot of people that feel that way, and I think that's that kind of a gut feeling that we have to. And we have to look at something bigger than ourselves or bigger than our company. And once we start doing that, then things start to make more sense.
I'll just add to that. Is this on? Can you hear me?
Yep.
That we put a lot of emphasis on employee recognition in the company. And we give, John and Becky, our president, give awards every month at our associate meetings, frame certificates to employees who have taken it upon themselves to integrate sustainability into their jobs. And then I explained to the company, as the award's being handed out, how this has helped the company both environmentally and financially, if it's the case that it does both. And so there's a lot of recognition, and these things get hung in the cubes, and people feel very good about it. And I think it does unleash this human spirit that you talk about, Walt, that when somebody can be in a company when they know that they can challenge what the company's doing, and they can make suggestions that are really taken into consideration. That I think it's this freedom that these employees feel. It's a great place to work when you can, as our VP of HR says, you know, we can feel good about our contributions to society at our churches, within our communities, in our families. But wouldn't it be great if we can also do this at work? I mean, it's where we come. It's a third of our lives. So I think if companies add this to what they do, they'll be so surprised at the benefits and just the morale. We've already seen that in this very tight labor market, that employees have candidates for positions have several offers, all of which are about the same. They'll choose to come to our company because of what we stand for. We just did a survey of our associates to find out what they think about where we are and who we are as a company, and 80% think that we're doing good things for the environment, and 90% say that really matters to them. So there are a lot of benefits in tapping into that human spirit. Thanks.
Kurt Krause, City Club. I think you've already answered my question, because it really was addressing the one that was asked before this. But it was basically, has it made any difference in the productivity and or the motivation of the employees in your firm with your natural step approach and the training that you've done? I think you've answered that.
I think Derek did a better job than I do, but yes, it definitely has. Thank you.
I'm Ray Polani, a City Club member. You mentioned Silent Spring of Rachel Carson as being one of the books that influenced you. And I suggest that there are at least two others that I can think of. One, The Closing Circle, and the other one, The Poverty of Power, by Barry Commoner, which dealt primarily with energy. And Mr. Smith mentioned that transportation is one of the items that you're concerned with. So my question to you is, in the context of global warming and everything else, do you try to use and choose rail over air and trucks in your transportation, in the movement of your goods? It is particularly important recently, as Amtrak has entered the field with Amtrak Express, which is a return to the old Railway Express, except with a new twist. Do you or don't you? If you do, why? If you don't, why not?
I have a way of taking a thought and just letting, I was honestly listening to you, but I went off to the next thought, which is an extension of your thought. Because when you first were saying that, I was thinking in terms of orders going out. You know, customers call us and then orders go out. And you know, we pride ourselves in trying to have the fastest possible service, you know, on Earth, which isn't true. We're up there a ways. But so what if we're on the phone and a customer says, you know, gee, I can have it shipped next day, I can get it tomorrow. And we could sit and say, well, yeah, you could, but you also could wait 10 days and we'll ship it surface, and you could help us and help the environment by doing that. And so this was an idea I had, which wasn't very well worded, because it sounds like, my God, what are you trying to do? But we were thinking that over time we actually would be saying that, but we would not encourage air shipment. We would not encourage fast delivery if they don't need it. A lot of times they just want to get the order placed, and they just want to know, it's, you know, can you ship it, but I don't need it tomorrow. And yet here we tend to encourage that, saying, you know, we can ship it and you can have it tomorrow, which is not, when you think from an environmental standpoint, it's not the right thing to say. That's on that end of it. On the other end of it, the majority of what we would tend to bring in, we bring in surface. We don't ship, we ship very little by air. We do everything we can not to. And the main reason we do that, we've done it for a long time, is from the economics of it. Now the environmental piece, when you add that to it, it's even more reason to do it. Your question on rail, though, Derek, did you want to say something?
Well, I would just say that we are definitely analyzing the best modes of transportation, and we're just in the analysis phase right now, but we will make decisions based around that. Actually, the White House Council on Environmental Quality and Yale University are using us as a model for a study that they're doing to look at global procurement and how you can limit transportation practices. So we gave them two, I think they were pants or blazers from two different vendors, and so if you're getting zippers from, you know, one area of the world, and you're getting your fabric from another area, and they're being manufactured in the Far East, and then you're shipping it back to your distribution center, and then you're shipping it to a customer in California. Yeah, there are a lot of opportunities within all those chains to limit the transportation impact. So that's a study that I think will be published next year, and we're the model on that. One thing we did do is we moved our distribution center a few years back from Portland to West Virginia, which was the geographic center of our customer base. And so that's not only better for service and cost, but it did limit a lot of the air shipments.
Within the country, Amtrak Express is a wild card.
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
Definitely.
we'll
Thank
definitely
you.
take a look at that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mark Anderson, member. By the way, I'm enjoying a silk sweater from your company. Quite nice.
Well, we're suffering in our Nordstrom ties.
One of the concerns I have is these are all good first and second steps, what we can do with our existing economic system in our society. But one of the big barriers is really our accounting and taxing system in particular, which not only doesn't encourage doing the right things, but actively discourages and punishes you if you are internalizing some of your environmental costs, if you will. And so I'd like to hear the answer. What can we do on that more systemic basis to have environmental costs internalized? And in particular, if you'd like to comment on our friends up north, the Earthwatch's proposals on consumption taxes.
Yeah, well, the whole tax shift, the book that I don't think Alan Durney, but his writer, I forget his name now, Brian, is wonderful. I mean, I know that if we get talking about this, and we're right in a very politically charged moment, I know. But, and I know when you talk about tax, it's just everybody just gets really nervous, and I'm not an expert at all, but I look at this resource tax versus tax on people. It's so simple. I mean, it's too simple, and I know that you can look at it in a theoretical way and say there's an obvious answer here. Now, if we could all come together and hold hands long enough to say, no, but what's going to happen here when we do this? I would think that we could solve this, but I know it's not that simple. I know there's an awful lot that goes on underneath all this, but to me, there's no question that if we can move from we can tax resources, then the incentives are there. Then we really do the job that we need to do.
We have time for one more question.
Okay. Joella Werlin, member of the club. I want to thank you and Jane. I went to Kenya with a group of women from the World Affairs Council of Oregon to dedicate a health clinic in a village near the Ugandan border, which you and your wife gave some incentive funding to here in the community for fundraising for that health clinic. And it's another example, I think, of the way in which you're looking at a bigger world. What in your view are some of the most immediate things that as Americans who travel abroad we can do to spread environmental messages without being contemptuous of people who have so little?
No, that's really that's a great question. In fact, I find when traveling outside the country now, it's very difficult, particularly in third world countries, and you look at yourself and you're trying to dress down and you're trying to look like you're living a simple life, and they know you're not. And I find it very difficult. The thing that I've noticed that's most helpful is the first thing to do is to admit who you are and what you're doing that you don't think is so great. To try to equal the playing field a little bit, to say that it's okay to talk about this. You don't have to beat up on us. And I think the other side of that thing is that we keep saying that, gee, if the rest of the world wasn't populating like they were, wouldn't that be better? Then we sit there and say that we're 5% of the world population consuming 25 to 30% of the resources. I mean, that's a ridiculous statement to even talk about, particularly from us, Americans. I think a lot of it is really listening, is to let people share their view of what's going on. It seems like everybody's always asking us, what do you think? You're the world power. You're all these things. But I think that we tend, as a country, we have a myopic view of the world. We think in terms of it's such a vast country and population and economy that that's enough for a lot of people, and we don't think outside the borders. And I would wish, if anything, that we could get a better education on average citizen would have a better sense of our place in the world and what is going on in the world, not just in this country.
Well, John, Gary, thank you very much.